fellow creatures of the night. I am the Howlerist, and I dissect the clinical reality behind humanity's darkest psychological afflictions. If you crave the terror that dwells within medical fact, leave your mark below and join the pack. Subscribe for more examinations where science meets horror. Tonight's subject: Agoraphobia, the beautiful cage that minds build for themselves. Let us begin with the facts before they consume you. The Gilded Cage, a clinical examination of agoraphobia. In the depths of winter 1871, German psychiatrist Karl Friedrich Otto Westphal documented something that would haunt the medical world for generations. He observed 3 men who had become prisoners of their own minds, unable to cross empty squares, paralyzed by open streets, terrorized by the very spaces where normal humans conducted their daily existence. He named this condition agoraphobia, literally fear of the marketplace. Westphal had no idea he was cataloging one of humanity's most insidious psychological predators. The clinical reality. Today, we understand agoraphobia not as a simple fear of open spaces, but as something far more sinister. Modern psychiatry defines it as an anxiety disorder where individuals experience intense fear in at least 2 specific situations: using public transportation, being in open spaces, enclosed spaces, standing in crowds, or being alone outside their home. But this clinical language masks a horrifying progression. Agoraphobia operates like a slow-acting poison that begins almost imperceptibly. Perhaps avoiding certain shopping centers, feeling uncomfortable on public transport, requiring escape routes in restaurants. The mind, in its desperate attempt to protect, begins building invisible walls. As moderate cases develop, the world shrinks measurably. A few blocks from home becomes the boundary of existence. Only certain stores, only with trusted companions. The geography of life contracts like a closing fist. In severe cases, individuals may become completely homebound and reliant on others for basic needs, trapped for months, years, some for decades. Behind these sterile diagnostic criteria lies a condition that transforms ordinary humans into prisoners of their own existence, trapped by fears that multiply and spread from situation to situation, location to location, until the only safe space remaining is an increasingly smaller area around the home. The Neurological Trap. What makes agoraphobia particularly terrifying is how it rewires the very architecture of fear in the human brain. Neuroimaging studies reveal that the condition fundamentally alters the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. Brain physiological processes underlying altered amygdala function and structure show decreased neurotransmitter function, creating a brain that perceives threats where none exist. During a panic attack, the engine that drives agoraphobic behavior, epinephrine, is released in large amounts, triggering the body's natural fight-or-flight response. A panic attack typically has an abrupt onset, building to maximum intensity within 10 to 15 minutes, and rarely lasts longer than 30 minutes. But in those minutes, the sufferer experiences palpitations, rapid heartbeat, sweating, trembling, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, tightness in the throat, and shortness of breath. Most disturbing of all, many patients report a fear of dying, fear of losing control of emotions, or fear of losing control of behaviors. The psychology of avoidance. But here's where agoraphobia becomes truly predatory. Each avoidance reinforces the fear. Each safe choice teaches the brain that the outside world is indeed dangerous. The condition feeds on its own success, growing stronger with every accommodation, every delivery to the door, every declined invitation. The fear must involve thoughts that escape from the situation might be difficult, or that patients would receive no help if they became incapacitated by fear or a panic attack. This isn't simply fear of spaces. It's fear of being helpless, trapped, vulnerable when the mind betrays the body. The modern enabler. We now live in an unprecedented era where complete isolation has become not just possible, but convenient. Online shopping, food delivery, remote work, digital entertainment. Our modern world has inadvertently created the perfect environment for agoraphobia to flourish undetected. Consider this. Someone can now live for years without meaningful human contact, ordering everything online, having it delivered to their doorstep. Technology that was meant to liberate us has instead enabled the most sophisticated form of self-imprisonment in human history. The statistics of suffering. The numbers tell a chilling story. An estimated 0.9% of U.S. adults had agoraphobia in the past year. But these figures likely misrepresent the true scope, as the most severe cases, those completely homebound, rarely participate in studies. Among adolescents, the condition is even more devastating. An estimated 2.4% of adolescents had agoraphobia at some time during their life, and all had severe impairment. Imagine, young minds, barely formed, already constructing the prison walls that will define their entire existence. The illusion of safety. What makes agoraphobia particularly insidious is how it masquerades as reasonable caution. The condition often runs in families, and stressful or traumatic events, such as the death of a parent or being attacked, may be a trigger. The mind, attempting to protect against real danger, creates an elaborate system of safety behaviors that eventually becomes the danger itself. Agoraphobics don't start by fearing everything. They start by fearing very specific situations. But fear is a contagious thing. It spreads from situation to situation until the only safe space remaining is an increasingly smaller area around the home. The companion phenomenon. One of the most disturbing aspects documented by clinicians is the companion phenomenon. Many agoraphobics can venture out only with specific trusted individuals, typically family members who become unwitting enablers of the condition. These companions become human talismans, protective charms against a world the sufferer's brain perceives as hostile. But what happens when those companions are no longer available? When they age, move away, or die? The agoraphobic is left truly alone with their invisible prison walls. The prognosis of despair. Perhaps most terrifying of all is the prognosis without treatment. According to the latest clinical diagnostic manual, the authoritative text that guides psychiatric diagnosis worldwide, remission rates for agoraphobia without treatment are low, 10%. This means that without intervention, 9 out of 10 people with agoraphobia will remain trapped by their condition indefinitely. The longer the condition persists, the more it infiltrates every aspect of existence. Social relationships deteriorate, career prospects vanish, physical health declines from lack of activity and sunlight. The outside world becomes not just frightening, but genuinely foreign, a place where the agoraphobic no longer knows how to function. The physical deterioration. The body, designed for movement and interaction, begins to betray those who remain isolated. Muscles atrophy from disuse. Bones weaken from lack of weight-bearing activity and vitamin D deficiency. The cardiovascular system, unchallenged by normal daily activities, becomes intolerant of even mild exertion. When agoraphobics finally do attempt to venture outside after years of isolation, their bodies often can't support what their minds might be willing to try. And so we arrive at the ultimate irony of agoraphobia. In attempting to create perfect safety, the sufferer constructs the most dangerous existence possible, isolated from help, cut off from support systems, trapped with only their own deteriorating mental state for company. The home, once a refuge, becomes a tomb for the living. Individuals may become completely homebound and reliant on others for basic needs. But what happens when there is no one left to rely on? When the walls that once protected become the bars that imprison? What happens when the cage becomes the only world you know? The mind, that remarkable organ capable of creating art, love, and meaning, can also construct prisons more effective than any physical barrier. And sometimes, in the profound isolation that this debilitating phobia creates, the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined begin to blur. Sometimes, the very walls we build to protect ourselves become our cage. Gilded Cage. Many years ago, wheels set in motion for my fate, and nothing I could do to change its plan. A stranger tried to take me, to fulfill an evil yearning, so a lifetime filled with fear to be my hand. I knew that I was different, much more cautious than the rest, perilous, a risk I'd never take. The utmost care for safety, my number one concern, till all-consuming every single choice I'd ever make. Adolescence was a nuisance. Friends all wanted me to mingle, stay out late, and walking home alone. But I could never face it, the chance of being hurt. So much easier for me to just stay home. Though slowly, but eventually, they'd all finally given up. A relief for me not having to excuse. And though I missed the company, I learned to like my own, till my existence had become one of recluse. My family didn't like it, but of course they understood, for they knew of the monster who had tried. So they would run my errands, spend some hours when they could, and fetch me things I'd need from the outside. Now, tracking time was something that I had never done, but family around me had grown old, and before I knew it, they all had disappeared. Now my life was so resolutely cold. But it's a modern world I live in, and I could buy it all. Some simple little purchases online, delivered to my doorstep, everything I need. Life lonely now, but safe, so I was fine. Sometimes in the backyard, I'd sit out and feed the birds. The fence was high, protecting me within. And after food exhausted, I would watch them fly away. Then, returning to my fortress, turning in. No way for me to gauge how others lived the life they had. I spent too many hours in my brain. Till, in lonely isolation, I was talking to myself. My every day-to-day became mundane. Thinking, dreaming, wondering, remembering those long gone. Pining for the loved ones who departed. When suddenly, I noticed something wasn't where it was the first incident when all the madness started. Lights would flicker off and on. I'd suddenly feel cold. Strange noises, or perhaps a chair would tip. A blurry patch of movement. Looking closely, it was gone. I'd chastise myself to stop and get a grip. But more and more these happenings would make me catch my breath. And I began to think, I not alone. Far too many strange encounters, with seemingly no cause. Was something otherworldly in my home? But this place had been my refuge, where nothing could invade. I tried to tell myself, it's in my mind. The more I tried explaining these occurrences I saw, the more stranger conundrums I would find. Was all of this a spirit of someone whom I loved? Surely they would never make me terrified. Perhaps psychokinesis, I read about it once, manifesting deep within my twisted mind. The more I tried to wish away this evilness around me, the more and more its power seemed to grow. It had broken every mirror and shattered every glass. Till finally, I had nowhere safe to go. Screaming at me, deafening, the walls began to shake. I looked around for somewhere safe to hide. My lifelong sanctuary had now become my hell, and my last resorting option was outside. A phantom running at me and hissing violently. I turned around and ran in utter fear, as horror overcame me, momentarily insane. My only thought was, get me out of here. As I stood there slowly, trying to catch my breath, I barely noticed the sunshine on my skin. Gradually, the sounds of little children, cars, and birds, to my mind, began to filter in. I slowly looked around at this foreign world to me. For the first time ever, I was not afraid, and the hell that I'd been living was finally done for me. Released at last from my own gilded cage.